we get ready here to deal with our first quiz of the new unit. Couple of things to keep in mind that could be helpful. Yes, I will give you the forms, okay, up here on the top. Reminder of what numbers we're going to be replacing in those. When it's slope-intercept, we're going to be plugging in for the slope, m, and the y-intercept, b. And for point slope, we're going to be substituting for the ones, x1 and y1. And for the slope, those are the only three places we're ever going to substitute in when we're trying to simplify this. So, for instance, on this first one, I'm going to make an adjustment. You're like, the very first question, you're already going to make adjustments? I am, because this is going to get nasty otherwise, and I don't want that happening to you. So here, we're going to change this x value. You're like, hey, Hardy, can I do this on a quiz too? If I don't like the number, I can just change it into something I like better. No, I'd prefer that you didn't do that. I look out for you on that front. So you're like, okay, write an equation in point slope form that passes through this point and has this slope. Okay. So all we're going to do, what's that? Yeah, I was going to say, there can be some places that can make life a little more interesting. So just trust me on this one. So here's my point slope form. Y minus, there's my y1. I'm going to leave it that way for the moment. Equals m, there's my slope, x minus x1. Okay, couple of things for me to mention here. First, what happens when we minus the negative again? That's going to become plus. It's like that minus turns 90 degrees and becomes a plus. Now, the reason normally that I would have made sure this isn't going to be nasty is most of the time when we've been doing this, we keep going. We distribute. We move the 3 over. But this is where it's important that I read the instructions carefully. I'll admit it, which Hardy didn't at the start of this problem. We could have left that number the same. Because it says write the equation in point slope form. This is in point slope form. I'm done. Okay? So don't overdo what needs to be done when we're looking at these. Okay? That's why we need to understand our forms and see them here. And I got them on my notes too. Now, the next one, though, we got to do a little work. So on this next one, rewrite the following in slope-intercept form. Gentlemen. Slope-intercept form means we're solving for y. We're trying to get y by itself. You're like, so am I just going to add the 3? We will, but not yet. Whenever we see parentheses, we're going to deal with those first. So we're going to distribute the 2. We're going to multiply the 2 times each of these. Once the parentheses are gone, then yes, now it becomes time to solve for y. What's the opposite of that minus 3 that's there? Okay. One step of opposite. Y is by itself. And we're good. If you happen to forget that when you're going towards the quiz, you know exactly what Hardy's going to do here. You have, right on the front of your notes, a problem that's in point slope, and then we worked on getting into slope-intercept. So that's all we're basically doing here, as we're working these through. So then I keep going a little further, and you're like, wait a minute. Write the equations in standard form. I don't see standard form up here anywhere, so what the heck is that? So a couple of things that can help me in this case. First, I have it here in my notes. And so I also take note, A has to be positive in a whole number. So you're like, okay, so what does that mean and how does this look? So I look around some more and I'm like, do I see anything that could possibly help me? So I'm like, well, let's see. Here, okay, so I got to get x and y on the same side. Let's do that. So I got to move my x out of there. So since that's positive, that's why the minus is going on here. So the first thing I notice when I'm doing this is, okay, I got x and y are on the same side. That's good. The number hanging out on itself on the other side. That's good. Notice when I was here on the left, because there's 3x and y, it didn't just become negative 3xy. That plus is still in there to keep the x and the y apart from each other. But I notice one other thing. You're like, am I done? A must be positive. That number's not positive. So if that happens, all we're going to do to fix it is multiply everything through by a negative. And again, that only happens if we're doing this. All the way through. So what that negative 1 is going to do is it's just going to change the signs on every term that we have here. X and y are on the same side. The a value, the number in front of x, is positive, and we're done. So we're in good shape. It's not a bad thing. So I keep rolling. And I'm like, okay, well now I got this one for an example. So, first job, I got to get x over here on the left. How am I going to move it? What's the opposite? Plusing, because it's negative. Again, just like we saw over here on the first one. Yeah. So this time I look, I'm like, wait a minute. The number in front of x, a, must be positive in a whole number. That's positive. That's a whole number. One step, I'm done. So it doesn't have to be multiple steps as we're going. Go find it. Find the weapon of mass distraction. So then I get to the big one. You're like, uh-oh. Write the equation in slope-intercept form that goes through the following points. So I'm given 2 points, and I got to do all this other stuff. Now here's the good news. You've got a step-by-step for the entire thing with an example right here to work with. So I'm like, okay, so what do I got to do first? I got to find the slope using my formula. So what we've always done in the past, and we're going to do it again, we're going to label things up. Remember, when we're looking for slope, let me get this down here to help us. There's my formula. So we got y2 minus y1. And then in the denominator, we've got x2 minus x1. So we got to clean this up a little bit. And there is nothing wrong. I'm going to keep saying this because I don't think some of you think I'm being honest when I say it. I don't know why. If you're not sure, literally, put it in your calculator, okay? Because when you do 2 minus 4, minus negative 4, excuse me, it's like adding. 8 minus 5 is 3. And if you can reduce your fraction when you get here, we need to do that. Okay, so there's my slope. I got that part ready. You're like, okay, so then what? Pick one of your original points and use your slope. There's your values to plug in. Okay, this is just me. I like to use points if there's no negatives. I hate dealing with negatives on this stuff. So I'm going to use the point 8, 2 to work with. You're like, okay, so what do I do once I got all this stuff? We're going to plug those 3 values into this equation. And I got all 3 of them right here. So here's how this rolls. Y minus, there's my y1. Again, if you're a creature of habit and you want to use that, I say go for it. Equals, my m is 2, my slope is 2, x minus my x1, which is 8. And so if I want some extra assistance, now that I've got it set up and getting where I need to go, I've got my example ready to go. It says, okay, we got to distribute. So I multiply the 2 through. My job now is to get y by itself. Undo the minus 2, just like we did undo the minus 5 there. Y is by itself. I guess I could have put it over here in the blank. But again, you've got an exact example in your notes on where to plug numbers and work on getting through some of those pieces. And again, if all else fails, you could always go back to the lesson too and kind of see what's going on. Some of these parts will speed up though. So, okay. More new stuff. Parallel and perpendicular lines. We got notes. Write the equation of the line that is parallel. Folding action here. To this equation, but goes through this other point. Okay. What do we know about the slopes of lines that are parallel? What's my slope of my parallel line to this going to be?
5.
Okay. Whatever number's in front of x, because that's my slope. So here, that's my notes. Okay. And then I've got my point right here. So I've got my x1 and my y1 to go with my slope, my m. So we're going to go plugging into point slope now. So I've got a general outline of it for us over here. So like, okay, y minus, there's my y1, equals m, my slope, x minus x1. And I've even, it's kind of nice in this case with my example, I even see the minus and negative is plus, so I'm going to fix that. And we're going to distribute, we're going to multiply my 5 through. Make sure it gets to both terms, not just the x. And once the parentheses are gone, the only job we've got left is to get y by itself. And so we're going to do the opposite of adding 1. Thank goodness we don't have to graph this one. Y-intercept of negative 31. But again, you've got your example, and if you've done your practice problems, it probably wouldn't take much of a quick look there to be able to get you going on that one. And then shock of shocks. Same page on the notes here on page 3. Write the equation of a line that is perpendicular. Now, reminder on perpendicular. When we're trying to find that slope, it's not the same like it was with parallel. We're going to take our fraction. We're going to flip it. And we're going to change the sign. So if this would have been negative to start, this would be positive. These are always going to be opposite signs of each other. Still have x1 and y1. And now, just like we did here, we're just going to plug the numbers into point slope. I got my arrows here. I got everything ready to go. So y minus, there's my y1, equals m, my slope. It's a fraction, but it's not going to be bad. X minus x1. But Hardy, we got to distribute the fraction. Not going to be a problem. Tack that one on the x. Now, when I get here, if fractions are not my friend, that's okay. Put your fraction in parentheses. You're like, now how did you do that? I did the parenthesis, and then I just used the divide button. There's no fancy fraction button on here. And I'm multiplying that times negative 8. Comes out nice. And so I just keep following along. I'm like, okay, I distributed. Oh, I got to get y by itself. Okay. I got to do the opposite of minus 6. And y is alone. Again, just a reminder, if you haven't, make sure, if you haven't done some of your practice, mess with some of these with those. It's like you're getting a preview of what you're going to be dealing with on the quiz. And it won't be bad. Now, here comes the interesting part. I'm going to do this off the top of my head, but if you have your Unit 3 notes floating around still, which I'd said you're going to want to keep, that's going to come in handy on this next part, because there's some review here too. But we'll do them together, so hopefully that'll help if a couple things are a little cloudy. If f of x is 7x squared plus 3, find f of negative 2. Okay, this is your x value. In other words, we're going to substitute in negative 2 where the x is. Everything else stays the same. And at this point, if you remembered that part, all you have to do is type this into your calculator and you're in business. That's all this f of stuff is you taking the number in the parentheses and taking out the x and substituting it. I don't need to do anything with this at all. Literally, X out, -4 in. Type the numbers in right into your calculator, do the work. And I'm ready to go. So a little substitution never hurt nobody. Okay, here, find f of 6. You're like, what the heck does that mean? Okay. So when x equals 6, what does y equal? Yep. You run this, you run into the graph, and then follow the graph over to the y-axis. 4. Find f of 9. When x is 9, what does y equal? Okay, so follow it up to your graph, and then just follow it over to go from there and see how that works. Slope, my gosh, we've been doing slope a lot now. So slope, remember, we're doing rise over run. So you're going to have to find 2 points on your graph somewhere. I'm going to dot all of them that I can see that are going through the crosshairs, okay? Once you do, you can pick any 2 to work with. So let's say we work with these 2. And you're like, okay, I'm going to go from here to there. That doesn't even matter. So I went down 1, 2, 3. And I went right 1, 2, 3, 4, which is positive. Now, if I wasn't sure if that reduced, if I do -3 divided by 4, I get a decimal. We don't want decimals. And I could always do math, enter, enter, and I get the same thing back, -3/4. That's my slope. That's it. Nothing else to do. So find those points. And again, we're just counting, and you can go any way you want. 1, 2, 3. So here I went up 5. And I went right 1. Yes, direction matters. That's perfectly fine. Or you could even just say 5. I don't care. Either one works. Now, here's the good thing about your current notes. Even though this is from Unit 3, you're like, wait, I'm supposed to find the slope. I don't have the slope formula. Oh, but you should. You should, because if I'm remembering correctly, and I am, if I look on the second page of my current notes, I've got the slope formula right there. So I'm just going to label up. And I'm going to do my thing. y2 minus y1. x2 minus x1. Now here's the one that gets a little more interesting. You're like, okay, 10 divided by 4, it's a decimal, so I'm just going to leave it. Hang tight. This is why, again, we like the right under alpha, math, enter, enter, because it does reduce further. Do I need to reduce it? Yes. We need to simplify. That's going to be an important thing. So, again, take advantage of what you have in your notes to help when you're working on those. All right, we're getting there, people. Okay, graphing using intercepts. Reminder, when we're finding an x-intercept, that occurs when y equals 0. So if I plug in 0 for y, the y term goes bye-bye. So we're just going to take the x term and set it equal to the answer. One-step equation. Now, I would prefer that you put this in as a coordinate point. If you wrote x equals 2, I'm not going to tell you it's wrong and that you can't, even though mathematically that's what you want to write. So I'd go to 2 on x, I'd put a point. Then for the y-intercept, that occurs when x equals 0. So we cover up the x part because it kind of disappears. And we take the y term. We set it equal to 18. And we're not going to add 6 because the opposite of multiply is to divide. And I get my y value. So here's my y-axis. I'm going to -3. I'm making a dot. Connect the dots. That works every time. So for each intercept, just set that part equal to 0. Excuse me, to the answer. And then connect the dots. Almost there. Inequalities. We got all the help here for dotted and solid and all that stuff. So when we're graphing, my y-intercept always gets graphed first. That point on my y-axis. -3. Get that in there first. And then my slope is 2/5. And again, rise over run. So we're going to go up 2 and write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Technically, I could go ahead and do my line at this point, but I'm going to choose not to. Because remember, if I run out of room, I can do the opposite of both of these. So I could go down 2 and left 5 if I wanted a third point. And before you draw the line through, remember, if there's no line underneath, it's going to be a dotted or a dashed line going through there. That's worth a point. And since the arrow is pointing at y, we're going to shade below. This is the shading thing because we got the arrows working here. And we said before, the only exception to running through all of that is if we get x or y. Now, reminder, x equals, you go to where x is 3, we put a dot. X is a vertical line. No line underneath, though. Now this is interesting. This isn't really an above-below problem. X is greater than 3. Which side of the line are my x values becoming greater, getting bigger? No, don't wait. Okay, if I look, the x values are getting greater or bigger as I go to the right. You know, here's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They're getting bigger. I'd shade on that side. If it's just y equals, notice no x again. Go to where y equals 4. That's going to be a horizontal line through there. But we've got the or equal to. So it's a solid line. And when the arrow's pointing left at y, that's shade below. So a question like that, you're going to get a point for the line, a point for is it solid or dotted, and a point for did you shade on the right side. So even if you're not sure on a part of it, make the attempt because you might get parts right and get some points that way. And to finish up, no applications. Okay. So you're like, wait, I've seen this before. Hang on a minute. Okay. We have a problem or problems that are similar. And they are both... No, we're not going to fail this part. All right, let's see here. We got word problems in two spots. We got them on the front page, and we got it over here. I think this one is going to do us best. Let's try this. This is on the front page of your notes. So here, we're charged $30 per month of service. Now we wrote on here, per hour was M. So this is my M. This is my slope. The cost of a new cell phone plus 10 months of service, hours of service, X1, is $195. The cost is Y1. Taking it directly off of what I'm seeing from my example. Write the correct point slope form, okay? There's point slope. So all I got to do is take this equation and plug the numbers in. So y minus, there's y1, equals m, 30, x minus x1. That's point slope. You're done. Now, if you kept going because you saw it was going in this problem, would I mark it wrong? No. I'd probably just circle and say you could have stopped here. Okay? So that one wasn't bad. Yeah, point slope is the long one. Slope intercept is when we got y equals. So I look at this last one and I'm like, okay, I think I can figure this out from the one we just did. So let's try this. So we're getting charged $8 for each hour. Per hour, per month is going to be my M. The per or each is my slope. Needs to work on it. The repairman worked 7 hours, sort of like the 10 months here, and charged Nico $81. The cost is Y1. So just like it said in the first one, write a point slope equation like this to represent the cost. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not worried if you don't use T and H. If you use X and Y, because that's what we've always done, that's not going to be a problem. So, Y minus Y1 equals my slope. And again, if you need help on the form, you should have it, okay, right here in the word problem on your notes. X minus, whoops, wrong color, X1. It just asked me for point slope here. Okay, for that step, I'm done. But right, now though, there's more questions. How much was the initial inspection fee? Rearrange for y equals, get into slope intercept and find the y intercept. Okay, so get it into y equals mx plus b and tell me what the b is. So, I'm going to recopy this. And now my job has become get it into this form. So you're like, okay, distribute. I got distributing. So multiply each of those by 8. And then my one last step, I got to get y by itself. Do the opposite of what's with it. Negative 56 plus 81 is 25. The inspection fee is just the number on the end. So I spent $25 to have it inspected. And then the last question. How much will it cost Nico if the repairman has to spend 4 hours working on the air conditioner? All we got to do is take my equation and put 4 in for x. And we're set. Again, you know how quizzes work in here. That's going to be close. The quiz itself is a little shorter than this, but it's going to be close to what you're seeing here. So tomorrow we are going to work with a review. I'm still working on what type of activity it's going to be. It won't just be sitting with pencil and paper. It will not be that. So that's kind of where we're at. So